We are with Charlie Parr, who is an extraordinary musician, storyteller, and what else do you do?
Uh, I don't do anything else right now. I haven't had a job in 21 years, going on 22 years. So that's what I do right now is I do shows
That's
and write music.
being an artist is quite the job.
Yeah, it is and it isn't. I mean, I feel very grateful to get to do it. And I've had a lot of jobs in my life, and this is by far the one that brings me the most joy. So I almost hate to call it a job. It's something I just feel continually grateful for. And it doesn't really feel very much like work to me.
How did you find your your calling?
I don't know that I never had a time without it. When I was some of my earliest memories had to do with listening to music and having music around. And I started trying to play guitar when I was around 8. And I'm still trying to figure that out. And I started, writing when I was a teenager. And obviously I'm still trying to figure that out, but it's always been something that I felt like was going to be with me no matter what I did. You got to, if I had to make a living, another way, I fully expected to have to do that. I never thought that I would be able to not have a job. But it's always felt like this was going to be part of my life no matter what else happened.
Was there a moment like that, kind of a performance or an artist or something that gave you that feeling of this is something that I want to do?
I think there was a lot of those kinds of moments where I heard music on a record, or I saw someone playing on even on the TV. I grew up in a small town in Minnesota where there wasn't a lot to do, and so you played sports or you got into music or whatever. But there was a strong little music scene in Austin, Minnesota when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s. It's just a lot of people played and there was a lot of inspiration around. And so hanging out at the music shop when I was a kid, because I loved guitars so much, and seeing some of these grown-ups, playing guitar, it just inspired me. Um, by the time I left Austin and had been playing a lot, and I ended up in Minneapolis, and I got to see guys like Spider John Kerner and Dave Ray and Dakota Dave Hall and Phil Haywood and Pete Rikus and all you know these folks playing guitar the way I wanted to learn how to play the guitar. It was just really, really inspiring, and it just kept on you know being an inspiration to me to this day. I mean, I listen to music every single day, and I seek out new music to hear that I haven't heard before. I want to feel challenged by music, and I want to feel inspired by it. And I look for it, and I get that feeling all the time. I just get reignited that this is all I've wanted to do.
Growing up in the 70s, I mean, it's interesting that you gravitated to kind of folk blues music and not what was on contemporary radio.
I,
Or maybe you did,
I
maybe that's not
did.
true.
I did. I kind of I was attracted by all of it. So my dad's record collection was mostly folk and blues music, very early country western music, and right up to, most contemporary records in his collection were Johnny Cash and Albert King. And I loved all of that stuff. I also loved most of the songs that I heard on the radio. I remember that summer that first Boston record came out, and you couldn't turn on your radio without hearing one of those songs. At the time it came out, I thought I hated it. I thought, oh, that's commercial. I was listening to I was listening to punk rock and the Ramones and Patti Smith, but then there's something about it that's also really, really good. And so in my record collection today, I have, the Ramones, Patti Smith, and Boston, in addition to Charlie Patton and Memphis Minnie. It's all, stuff that fits somewhere in the category for me.
Well, it seems like it's a level of craft. I mean, Boston, they were, and Patti Smith, everyone was, and the Ramones, they were really good. They crafted great pop songs.
Absolutely.
But how did you, I'm interested in that moment when you're in Minneapolis, which has a pop and music scene, and so much came through there and was happening there. And how did you discover that you wanted to tell stories and did you feel any hesitancy about, there's so much about who's allowed to tell a certain kind of story, and who, it's even if you're going to play country music, you should be from a certain kind of an area or have had a certain kind of a life. Otherwise, I mean, to me that shit's crazy. But
yeah, well, we all have the story that we have to tell, no matter what it looks like to anybody else. That's what we have to start with. Where you go from there. I've always kind of been a fan of the idea that I will start writing with something kind of familiar, and then make a conscious effort to try to write into the part of the world that I don't know much about, so I can try to learn and evolve a little bit. So I don't know if that stuff doesn't feel real sometimes, that there's qualifications to being a creative person. That doesn't feel right to me. But I started writing, like I said, when I was a teenager, but I didn't really start writing songs until I was in my 20s, after my dad passed away. That's when I really started to sit down and write, and then it felt very much different to me. Then it felt like I had more purpose in my writing after my dad had gone.
what do you think it was about him passing that kind of freed you up to go into more of an extended storytelling in the song form?
Yeah, I don't know if I really know. I mean, I think what happened was, I had a hard time as a teenager, like a lot of us did. I got in all kinds of trouble, and I dropped out of high school, and I did all kinds of things, and I know that was not exactly the most easy thing in the world for my parents. By the time I was in my 20s and those problems had been mostly cleared away, my dad and I got really, really close, and I learned things about him and his past that I didn't really know before, or maybe I knew but I hadn't paid attention to because I was not listening. When I really started to listen to what he was saying, and I started to appreciate the kind of wisdom that he had, he died. And the shock of it, really tore me apart. And I kind of took on this attitude of, well, I'm going to desperately try to remember everything he said. And the best way for me to remember things that he was talking about was to write it into songs. And he loved music. you know, he taught me how to love music. So, you know, it felt natural to me to sit and make a song up, not even about him, but about something he told me about. And then I could embellish it in my own way. And it's almost as though he and I created something together. And that at least in the very early days when I was starting out, that became a kind of a fire, you know, that kept on moving me forward.
Well, the weekend's almost here, I can feel it.